everyone, it's Sarah. Welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video we're going to be doing stitch number 10 in our Harmony Sample Blanket Crochet Along. And if you don't know what we're doing, is each month we're doing one stitch to add to our blanket. We've learned all these stitches: granny squares, V-stitches, crossover, bobbles, shells, blocks. Here's the basket weave. And this month we're going to be learning how to do the butterfly stitch. And this stitch has also been known as the bow tie stitch. They're done the same, and I think the only difference really is the amount of chains in between. They're both work the same, so you can call it butterfly or bow tie, whichever you want to call it. Now the pattern is on my blog, and I'll put that blog link in the notes underneath this video. So what you need for stitch number 10 is to use the same yarn that you've been using for your entire project. If you're using cotton, stick with cotton. I've been using solids that are worsted weight or medium weight number 4 yarns, and most of my yarns are either Red Heart Super Saver or I Love This Yarn or different worsted weight leftovers that I have on hand. It's a great way to use up a lot of leftover yarns. Also, you'll need to continue using the hook that you've been using. We've been using the H, which is a 5.00 millimeter crochet hook. You want to use the same crochet hook for the entire project so that your gauge stays pretty close. Now I know sometimes because we're doing a stitch each month, your gauge may shift just a little bit, and that's something that you're going to have to watch. I did notice on one of mine I had to take a row out because when I first began the new row, it was squeezing in just a little bit. And so that's something that you're going to have to watch. Of course, you'll need some scissors and a needle to weave in your ends. And then you'll need your project that you've been working on. This is the one that I've been working on. There's the spike stitches from last week. And of course, this week we're going to do the butterfly stitches. One thing to remember, that this blanket is based on 75 beginning chains, which is 74 stitches. So each row needs to equal 74 stitches. And if you want to adjust the size, you'll need to watch video number 1 with our stitch number 1, because in that video I explain how to adjust the size and the measurements. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Now, I hope that you've taken the time to go ahead and weave in all your ends on both ends of your blanket so it doesn't get away from you. I try to do them after each stitch. If not, you'll have way too many ends because we're changing colors a lot. Now, on the last row that we did, I hope that you left your last loop. If you didn't, that's okay. You can go ahead and join your yarn in right on that first stitch. But it's always better, if you can, to leave that last loop so we can bring in our new color of yarn. Or if you're using the same color of yarn, you can do that too. I've often said this blanket would be beautiful in just one color, like a cream or a blue or something that's just all monochromatic. Alright, so I've brought in my new color. We're going to go right in this first stitch and stitch a single crochet. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to just stitch one row of single crochets, stitching one single crochet in each of the stitches, just to give us a nice base to work off of for our next row where we're going to start our butterflies. And this is also a good place to check your stitch count. Make sure that you only have 74 single crochets. So for this first row, we're stitching one single crochet in each of the stitches across. I've completed my row of single crochets, and I'm going to change colors. And the reason I am is I want my butterfly stitches to pop out. Alright, and I'll bring that pink back in later. I'm going to use this gold. I think it'd be really pretty for the butterfly stitches. And I'm just going to bring that in, tail out of the way, and chain 1 and turn my work. As the blanket gets bigger, it becomes more complicated to turn, doesn't it? Alrighty, now the way this pattern is going to work is we're going to stitch in the first single crochet, stitch a single crochet. The chain 1 does not count as a stitch on this one. And we're going to stitch a single crochet in the next one. Then we're going to chain 5. We're going to skip the next 5 single crochets and stitch a single crochet in the next stitch. And then we'll stitch 4 more single crochets. And this is the way that this first row for our butterfly stitch will work. You'll chain 5, skip 5, and then stitch 5 single crochets. Alrighty, so chain 5. We'll skip the next 5 and then single crochet in the next single crochet. We're not working any double crochet stitches in the butterfly stitch. We're only working singles. One, two, three, four, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is how the repeat for this row will work. Chain 5, skip 5, and 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then single crochet in the next. There we go. And then 4 more single crochets so that we have 5. And then we'll just repeat this across. So I've completed this working across 5 and 5, 5 and 5, and you'll notice we have 2 stitches at the end, and so we're going to place a single crochet in those last 2 stitches. And this keeps us on our 74 stitches. We're going to chain 1 and turn. Alright, so now what we're going to do, our chain 1 does not count as a stitch, and so what we're going to do is place a single crochet in this first 7 stitches, and this will keep us on track. 1 in the first 2 and then 1 in the next 5, which gives us 7 single crochets to begin with. Alright, so now we're going to repeat what we've been doing. We're going to chain 5. We're going to skip over this chain 5 here and stitch 1 single crochet in each of the 5 single crochets. See how that looks? And then we'll repeat this all the way across. So chain 5, 1 single crochet in each of the single crochets, the 5 single crochets. And chain 5. One single crochet in the next 5 single crochets. And so we'll just repeat this across. 5 single crochets, chain 5, 5 single crochets, chain 5. So we've completed this row, brings us back, and at this end we have 2 single crochets, because instead of ending with 5 single crochets, we ended with a chain 5. And so we'll put 1 single crochet in those last 2, chain 1, and turn. And now we're just going to repeat this row again. So we'll place a single crochet in the first 2 single crochets. Remember, our chain 1 does not count as a stitch. We'll chain 5. And then 1 single crochet in each of those 5 single crochets. And repeat. Chain 5, 1 single crochet, and the next 5 single crochets. And you can see how that looks. We have 3 sets of chain 5 and 3 sets of single crochets. We'll repeat this across our row, stitching chain 5 and 5 single crochets. There's my 5 single crochets and chain 5 all the way across our row. I've completed this row, 5 single crochets, chain 5 across. I've done my last 5 single crochets, and now I need to do those last 2. Chain 1 and turn. Alright, so we're back at the beginning. And on this row, we're going to turn our 3 sets of chain 5 into butterflies. So our chain 1 again does not count as a stitch. We'll put our single crochet in those first 2. And then we're going to single crochet in those next 5 for our repeat. 1, all right, and that gives us a total of 7 there at the beginning on that side. All right, let's turn these 3 chains of 5 into a butterfly. We're going to chain 2. We're going to take our hook and go all the way around all 3 of those chains and stitch a single crochet and then chain 2. Then we'll go right to our next single crochet and stitch 1 single crochet in these 5 single crochets. And see how that looks like a butterfly or a bow tie? Very pretty. All right, let's do it again. Chain 2. We'll go all the way around all 3 of those chain 5s and stitch a single crochet and chain 2. Then we'll go right to the next single crochet and stitch 1 single crochet in the next 5. Two butterfly stitches made. And we'll repeat this all the way across our row. There we go. 1, 2 chains, go around, stitch a single crochet and 2 chains. Go in the first single crochet and stitch 1 single crochet in the next 5. And repeat. So I finished working across my row, stitching my butterfly stitches. I made my last butterfly there, and so I just have those 2 single crochets at the end. Now I'm going to change my color because I want my butterfly stitch rows to sort of pop out. So I'm going to go back to using my pink. Now this is actually a completed butterfly stitch rows. But I'm going to show you how to continue on if you want to make more, and also how to make a foundation row for your next color or your next stitch. All right, so I've got my pink in, I chained one, and I'm going to turn. And what we'll do is we'll do what we did down here. One single crochet in the first 2 stitches. We're going to chain 5. There we go. Then we'll go over to the first single crochet and stitch 1 single crochet in those 5 stitches. And what this does is it sets you up so that you can make more butterfly stitches. But I'm going to also show you how to make it so you can do a different stitch on top, like when we do our next stitch next week, which will be the moss stitch. So we'll just go back to stitching. There we go. The same pattern that we've been doing. 2 single crochets, chain 5, 5 single crochets, repeat it all the way across, and then remember to put 2 single crochets on the other end. So again, I've completed 5 single crochets with chain 5s in between. And this is how you would do this. You would continue on with the pattern that we did here with the next set if you wanted to make more butterfly stitches. But if you want to have a solid row between, say, of single crochets or double crochets in between your rows of butterfly stitches, we would turn our work, chain 1 if you're going to do single crochets, and then we'll single crochet in each of the single crochets. And then when we get to the chain 5, we would just stitch 5 single crochets around that chain 5 chain. And this will give you your stitches if you want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, one more, something different like we're doing on here. If you only wanted to do 1 row of butterfly stitches, you put those 5 single crochets in that chain 1 space or chain 5 space, excuse me, and that keeps your count right. Alrighty, so then we'd go to the next 5 single crochets and stitch a single crochet in each of those. And then again 5 single crochets in the chain 5 space. And like I said, that would keep you on your stitch count so that maybe next week, or if you're wanting to add other things to this blanket, you've still got your same amount of stitches. And I think it'd be really pretty to do several rows of the butterfly stitch. But I did want to show you how to even out that row in case you didn't want to. And then when you're done doing as many butterfly stitch rows as you want, then you can do this row just to finish off and be ready for the next stitch. I've completed my finish off row is what I'm calling it. And I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn. And I need to weave in my end. So I've got my needle here. But one thing to remember is don't weave in that last loop. What I do is I make a chain 1, I snug it down, and I pull that loop just a little bit big. That way I'm ready for next month stitch to be added in and not have the issue of not having a loop to put it in. All right, so let's go ahead and weave these ends in. And one thing I want to remind you is when you're weaving in an end, give yourself, when you cut it off, a little bit of length so that you have a little bit of room to do what you need to do. Okay, and one thing I like to do is go through the stitches and some of the fibers of the yarn. There we go. I like to go up and back. And then I like to go back the other way. I don't like to have the end of my weave-in on the outside when I'm doing a blanket like this. I like it to come inside. That way when I clip the yarn, I'm towards the inside, not the outside, in case it gets pulled a little and that little edge might come out. All right, let me do this pink one real quick. I'm going to go through. Another thing to remember, when you're weaving in and you've got lots of colors, try to stay in that color you're working with, or you end up with it showing through. And see, I'm going through stitches and fibers, going back, and then I'm going to turn and come back this way, and then clip that off to the inside. Now I have more ends to weave in, but that's our stitch for today, the butterfly or bow tie stitch. I think this would be beautiful on the edge of a sweater, edge of a shawl, or a poncho. Lots of great possibilities for the butterfly stitch.